A wise painter uses his celestial power to hunt creatures of darkness and imprison them inside a magical book. Today we will recap the story of the movie, The Night of Shadows, from 2019. When the world of mortals was invaded by creatures of darkness, only a celestial sage with his magic brush can imprison the evil creatures in his book of beasts. In the midst of a terrible ocean storm, he, the wise painter, stands with his two small assistants. His canoe is moored to the black dragon of the eastern sea that throws the sailors against the terrible waves. But the vessel has arms that can save them from falling into the raging sea. Pooh hurls his green disciple at the monster, and the beast releases a toxic green gas with a pungency so great that the fish is stunned. Pooh picks up his brush in the book, and conjures his imprisonment seal. Magical chains are cast and attach themselves to the black dragon. They pull the creature towards the portal that opened in the book, and that's it, imprisoned. Then we see that in reality Pooh is telling this story to children in his village, but since they don't have money to buy his adventure book, he sends them all away. Nearby, Yanfei, the assistant policeman, is trying to convince his boss that the robberies of the stores of valuable artifacts were caused by the same person, the owner of the strands of hair he collected at the crime scene. However, Chief Jen has the store employees themselves arrested and even takes hidden artifacts for himself, taking advantage of them. When they leave, several peasants call the delegate to denounce a man who has been telling horror stories and scaring their children. Yanfei is then in charge of checking who this crazy man is. Pooh is high on the mountain at his home in another day of training with his legion of magical creatures, when he is accosted by the horde of angry mothers who come in with fire in their eyes while he was eating lunch. The sage even chokes on the dumpling he was eating. To calm all the shouting, Pooh asks Little Wind to use his light magic. And of course, he will try to sell his books as he always does with the village children. Meanwhile, Yanfei realizes that the man's chickens are wearing the artifacts stolen from the jewelry store, which means he has finally found the thief, and starts collecting evidence from all the chickens. The painter manages to convince the ladies to pay the price of the book since they are bewitched, and they all leave happy for the purchase. Yanfei is confused to see that scene. He goes in to confront and catch the thief once and for all. He enters the house and tells Pooh that he will have to take him to the police station and puts him in rope handcuffs that were certainly not enough to arrest the sage, which had already come off and left the policeman trapped in a split second. Pooh says he did not steal the jewels and will show who did it. The green gnome appears and releases its toxic smoke, which makes the officer black out for good. And then he wakes up already inside Pooh's flying canoe. The wise man tells them that they will find the jewel thief, and they set off at full speed through the skies. When they reach the first city, the wooden totem that Pooh calls Maozan helps the men down. They continue to hide in the temples, and Yanfei is startled by a cloth bag moving alone across the rooftops. Pooh conjures his brush and paints a ridiculous design on the policeman's face, to open his magic eye, and so, with his face completely messed up by the paintings, Yanfei can see the creature that was stealing the valuable artifacts. The thieving piglet runs towards his beloved mule named Donna, but is approached by his future father-in-law, who confiscates all his artifacts, claiming he wants more money to release his daughter Donna's hand to the piggy. He begs him to let him go, if not the wise Pooh will catch him soon. And of course, there was no time. The sage arrived with his brush and used the capture seals. The little pig was quickly sucked into the trapping jar. The mule's father was running from Yanfei, and was found by the chief of police and the other officers. The deputy orders them to arrest the man, saying that the credit for the capture would all go to him. Yanfei questions him, saying that he made an effort to find that criminal, but Chief Jen mocks his face paintings and says that he will be fired for being so stupid. Meanwhile, a young woman named Jade and her assistant walk through the night to a somewhat mysterious temple. The girl enters the place despite the warnings of her subject to return home. Jade asks the sorceress if it is really true that she has a mirror that, when looking at its reflection, leaves the person with a dazzling beauty. The woman then takes her in front of the object and asks her to close her eyes. The sorceress releases a magic through her mouth that invades the girl's mind, leaving her under her total control. The girl simply leaves the temple and enters a magical litter and flies through the skies. The litter arrives at a forest and is intercepted by magical seals that reveal the true monsters carrying the girl. She slowly lands on the bridge, and the samurai warrior Yan Chichia appears in the mist. He absorbs the monsters into his receptacle, and the moment he identifies Jade, he is surprised by a red smoke that comes flying from the sky. And it materializes in Xiao Chen, a powerful sorceress. She says she needs the souls of young women to feed herself. Yan orders her to release the girl and then releases all the seals with the power of the infinite cosmos, forming a flying bridge for him to reach his opponent. But the woman manages to easily repel his attacks and knocks him to the ground. Yan uses his sword and conjures another whirlwind of seals that envelops Xiao Chen, throwing her against the trees. He approaches the woman and tries to remove her life orb, but she throws him away with just one blow. As the warrior still stunned by the attack, she captures the girl and flees the scene. She takes Jade's soul to the temple of her sorceress sister and places it in a painting on the wall, so that she can devour it later, so that they can increase the length of their lives. In Pooh's house, the jar where the pig elf is imprisoned begins to move around the room. The creature is trying to escape, but the wise man catches him before he could complete his plan. Pooh ends up letting him go, since the little seems harmless and will be able to help him with some tasks. But just to make sure, he sews a tracking collar on his wrist, so that the piglet doesn't run away and do more damage. Yanfei also arrives at Pooh's house after his expulsion from the police. He wants to become a disciple of the sage. Even though Pooh finds the young man totally clumsy, the policeman is determined to become powerful and will show off his special skills. He leaves Pooh impressed with a delicious feast of various roasted chickens and tasty food. The catch in all this is when the master discovers that the chickens used were from his coop. His pet chickens Tofu and Mihoho were roasted for dinner. The poor guy goes into total despair, and starts praying for them. But the student warns his master that they must leave for the city and save Miss Jade, who has been kidnapped. And so they set off on their mission. They arrive at the temple that was closed by the police. And as they enter the place, Pooh feels the presence of an evil spirit in the place, which turns out to be the elf pig that is there sniffing Miss Jade's trail. He finds a piece of her clothing, and Little Wind takes the silk and uses a spell to show the warriors what happened to the young woman so they understand where to look for her. Pooh orders his student to go after Jade's tracks, while he investigates the place. After a long, windy walk, Yanfei arrives at the temple of the sorceresses. The warrior Yan Chichia is in a bar and realizes that the sorceress appeared there after some drink. As soon as she leaves the establishment, he decides to follow her until he reaches the temple of the silver mirrors. The sorceress comes out as a dark mist through one of the pieces. When asked where her sister is, she conjures one of her mirrors and uses it as a portal to slap the warrior in the face. She uses the various reflections of the silverware to hit Yan Chichia with her dagger, teleporting to different places at the same time. The warrior begins to break the mirrors, but the sorceress raises the various spinning discs in the air and throws them at the young man, who ends up being knocked out and pushed against the wall. Several arms and legs hold him so that the sorceress could finish him with her dagger, but she is prevented by her sister, who we discover has a great love for the warrior. The two are in love despite their opposite auras between light and darkness. At the same time, Pooh's entire team enters the room, and he quickly attacks the sorceress, who has to retreat to the mirror to avoid being hit. The warrior also ended up being stunned in the attack, and Mao Zhao carries him out. Pooh is alone in the house and hears a strange noise, and when he approaches the place, he is grabbed by the sorceress into the mirror. Half of his body is out, and he needs to defend himself only with his legs from the arms that try to hold him. Pooh starts jumping from mirror to mirror looking for where his brush fell. He takes the opportunity to hold on to the sorceress and jumps out of the reflection. Now his halves need to come together. The sorceress tries to attack him with her daggers, but he escapes by doing a handstand, and finally sticks his half body together. With the brush in hand, he can conjure the book and cast his power of chains. The sorceress flees in her mist into the reflection, but the chains are able to bring her back and throw her into the monster book. At Pooh's house, Yanfei arrives desperate, saying that he has finally found the temple of the red sorceress. Yan Chichia realizes that he is talking about his beloved and asks the sage to let him join the mission too. The three arrive at the temple and are greeted by Xiao Chen. The warrior tries to convince the woman that she can still become a human. But when she finds out that Pooh has imprisoned her sister, she goes after him. Yanfei ends up being wrapped in the red fabrics and trapped like a cocoon in the tree. Yan Chichia fights with Pooh not to let him attack her beloved at all costs. Meanwhile, Mao and the other creatures try their best to hit the sorceress, but they also end up being hit and trapped by the fabrics. When Pooh retrieves his brush with the elf piglet and is about to write the imprisonment seal, he is trapped by the red cloths. The sage starts to draw the seal with his mouth, but the warrior again gets in the way and breaks the magic, shouting for Xiao Chen to run away. And once again, they miss the chance to capture her. Yanfei summons Jade's parents to show them that their daughter is trapped in the framework of evil forces along with other girls. And the father leaves him in charge of the mission to destroy the sorceresses from now on. At Pooh's house, he uses his wind-up powers to show Yan Chichia's memories. The young man was a snake-shaped soul-hunting evil force. He met little Xiao Chen as a child, and the girl was not afraid of him. Through his shadow he could emerge as a human and in return gave her his orb of life. But everything went wrong. When Xiao Chen eliminated a legion of bandits who invaded her temple, the orb was stained with blood and then she became a force of evil. To make things right, Yan Qiqia must get her orb back. To help the warrior in his mission, Pu created a completely insane fake ceremony. Yanfei gathered all the young women of the district in that place. Since the red sorceress is weak and will need to feed on the souls of some of them soon, they believe that she will appear there at any moment. The warrior who remained outside alone felt the presence of Xiao Chen. She was approaching the place. Upon being found by her, the young man insists that the woman return him from his orb of life and return to being a human as before. But the sorceress is determined to live as a force of evil and binds Yan Qiqia with her cloths, leaving him knocked out and tied to a pillar. Xiao Chen enters the temple and sees the two men in disguise, because it takes a dumb one not to recognize Jackie Chan with a beard. She goes to the dressing room and absorbs the soul of the girl who was about to enter the stage and puts on their clothes to blend into the performance. Pu quickly notices that the dancer is the red sorceress, but when he warns Yanfei, the man shouts absurdly for everyone to flee and chaos takes over. Xiao Chen uses her control magic and turns all the undercover cops into her puppets, who start attacking Pu in a very twisted and bizarre way. The sage uses the chairs in the hall to trap the humanoid Lecrades. The officers with swords also try to slice Pu, but he conjures a paralyzing seal and leaves the opponents static. The sorceress goes into full fury mode, unleashing her power and heading for the heavens. She transforms into a giant snake of red mist and begins to destroy the entire temple. Pu needs to create a protective shield, holding back the snake's various attacks with all his might. As there was no other option, Pu jumps away and opens the gate of imprisonment in his book. The chains are thrown around the snake. It screams in extreme pain. The devoured souls of the young women begin to be released from their bodies. And finally, the red sorceress is sucked into the book of creatures. The souls of the young women return to the frame of the Temple of Mirrors, and they can free themselves from that prison. The elf piglet finally finds Yan Qiqia and manages to free him. The young man tries to run desperately to the battlefield, but he is too late. He collapses when he finds out that Pu has imprisoned his beloved in the book, and he will not accept that at all. So the sage uses the power of Windy to erase the warrior's memories, so that he can walk a path away from the sorceress. It seemed that everything had turned out well. Yanfei was promoted to chief of police, and now he and his master were recognized for bringing peace to the district. However, Little Wind decided to take a hidden action from her master, as she felt sorry for the warrior. She went to Yan Qiqia and showed him part of her erased memories, indicating a temple that he should follow. Upon arriving at the indicated location, the young man sees the firefly tree that Xiao Chen used to stay. And soon he remembers his whole story. And now he will seek revenge for what they did to her. The sage has just arrived from the award ceremony for his achievements, and he is completely drunk. Yan Qiqia arrives at his house with blood in his eye, and attacks him with the infinite cosmos, trapping him in a whirlwind of seals. He manages to take Pu's brush and open the portal of the magic book, but the warrior falls into the rift, entering that mysterious prison of the cosmos with several ancient temples in space rocks. Inside one of the towers is Xiao Chen's sister, chained and taking several electrical discharges as punishment. An entity announces the time of execution, and the green sorceress is dragged by chains through a protective sphere and picked up by small orcs who throw her through a portal of fire. Xiao Chen is in the same situation, being electrocuted by the statues of punishment. The warrior approaches the woman, and says that it is time for all this to end. He must return to being a force of evil and she, a human, even against the will of his beloved. Yan Qiqia uses the brush to absorb the orb of life back to him, and so the chains attach themselves to the young man. Now he was an evil force. No matter how hard the girl tried, it was inevitable. The time for execution arrived, and Yan Qiqia is pulled at full speed into the portal. But the brush begins to emanate a heavenly power and snaps the chains at the last moment. The chains turn on the warrior like serpents from the shadows, but he conjures a wave of energy that snaps them all at once, destroying every temple in that dark prison. All of reality begins to collapse. As a result, all the imprisoned demons begin to escape through the opening of the book. Pu needs to enter the prison with his flying canoe to retrieve his brush, which is with Yan Qiqia. The problem is that the warrior has turned back into an evil soul and his eyes are blood red. He throws a serpent of seals at the ship and knocks everyone into the air. But Maozan manages to pull them back to safety one by one. The snake continues to chase them at full speed between the temples, but it splits in two. The first stumbles out of the mountains and crashes. The second starts chasing the little wind and the green ogre. In order to defeat the creature, the Katinga monster lets out an evil bang and Little Wind conjures his flames. Now everyone joins up again in the flying craft, but Yan Qiqia is not done yet. This time he creates a colossal serpent, much larger than the previous ones. Manzin speeds up the boat even more and they flee through the rubble of the temples of the serpent's supreme mouths. Then they finally manage to jump into the portal, but Yan Qiqia does not give a respite, and a dispute to see who will take possession of the brush begins. Pooh struggles with the help of his monsters to get it back, but he is easily overpowered. Yan Qiqia begins to concentrate all his energy of fury, and at the moment he is going to finish Pooh with the snake attack. Xiao Chen's scream makes him stop. The woman flies towards the execution portal and the warrior leaves after her for the last time. But the woman asks the young man to stop trying to save her. It was not worth all that suffering. Even if they became just ashes, they would be together forever. And so Yan Qiqia releases the brush, falling with his beloved into the portal of execution. They both turn to dust, but they were together as they wished. Now Pooh, Yanfei and the monsters will continue on more hunts for dark beings and new journeys will be written in the sage's books. So what did you think of this movie? Leave it in the comments below. And if you liked the video, please like and subscribe for more movie recaps. See you next time.